My name is Sally Powers-Albertz. I'm a lifelong resident of Fond du Lac. I graduated from Marian University when it was still a college in 1999, and I just in time to retire in 2000. I earned a bachelor's degree in history with a minor in pre-law while working in the Student Support Center there. I have been a genealogist for over 30 years, working for many clients as well as chasing my own ancestors. I did find my first ancestors came to the colonies in 1638. I've done some transcribing. The plat maps have been transcribed. I did that. It took me a year to do each one, so I did 1862, which is a law map, 1874, 1893, and 1910. So if you're ever looking for the indexes for the plats, they do have them in the reference department here. And I really need to count all the countless people that helped me with my research. This program is part of my research on the black people who came to the Fond du Lac area during the Civil War in 1862. So this is just one part of that. The first mention I find in the Fond du Lac newspapers regarding the Ku Klux Klan was in July of 1868, where they reported a funeral for Fond du Lac residents. And while this is really hard to read, because the old newspapers bled through from when they photocopied them, it says, KKK, quite a number of Ku Klux Klan bills were circulated on our streets last Friday. The bill seemed to be in mourning for some departed Ku Kluxer, as it was printed in heavy black and had the skull and crossbones of the departed comrade illustrated. We hope the Klan will favor our citizens with a look at their masked figures one of these bright nights. If they do, of one thing we may feel assured, every mask will hide a Democratic face. And that's mostly because most of the Ku Kluxers in that time era were Democrats. Again, this year was 1862. It was quite early, but locals were aware of the KKK and what it stood for. But let's start with a little background. The U.S. actually has had 3 waves of claims. The first was 1865 to 1871. The second was 1915 to 1944, and the third was the 1946, right up to the present day. And they are alive and well today, as referenced by the national news. 2 weeks ago on the news, it was specified that out east, I think it was Massachusetts, the Ku Klux Klan was handing out their brochures to children with a candy bar attached, urging their parents, they wanted them to urge their parents to join. The first wave of these KKK was mostly Southern, founded in Pulaski, Tennessee by 6 Confederate officers. It was supposed to be a fraternal social club. However, as it grew, they sought to overthrow the Republican state governments in the South during Reconstruction. Violence started to be used against African American leaders as well as white Republicans. Members constructed their own costumes with masks to hide their identity. It was during this first phase that the conical pointed hats were first used. The terror of midnight rides was started by the Klan to restore white supremacy following the Civil War. Mississippi was one state that had a high incident of burned houses where many black people were murdered by the KKK during their rides, their bodies left on the road. This is a KKK cartoon appearing in the Tuscaloosa, Alabama newspaper, showing that the KKK would lynch scallywags and carpetbaggers if they would venture into the South. And in your brochure, there's should be a definition of those. Winford Forrest became the Grand Wizard, claiming to be the nation's first national leader. During a newspaper interview, he stated that the Klan's primary opposition was to the Loyal Leagues that he described as nothing more, and excuse the term, a nigger KKK. The Loyal Leagues consisted of the first African-American radical Republican organization in the southern U.S. They were quasi-secretive, male-oriented club established during the Civil War to promote loyalty to both the United States and Abraham Lincoln. They opposed the Copperhead Democrats and were allied with the Republican Party. KKK membership in this first wave slowly went downhill, was almost extinct by 1871. The federal government passed the Reinforcement Acts during 1870 and 71, hoping to prosecute and suppress Klan crimes. In 1915, a second group wave was founded by William J. Simmons and was popular in every state, especially urban areas of the Midwest and West. This included Fond du Lac. It was during this time that A Birth of a Nation was produced by D.W. Griffith. It was based on the novel The Klansman by Thomas Dixon Jr. It glorified the Klan and was also for prohibition. It opposed Catholics and Jews, focusing also on the threat of the Catholic Church, because the Klan was sure that the Pope was going to take over the U.S. Here is Fond du Lac's ad for The Birth of a Nation in the Daily Commonwealth. Its show date was 8th of April, 1917 at the Henry Boyle Theater. Before Birth of a Nation was released, a private showing was held at the White House for President Wilson. Rumor had it that the president had endorsed the film, but one of his advisors later said he strongly disliked it. After the film was released, Klan organizers, who are Kliegels, signed up hundreds of new members, many of whom believed the organization was nothing more than a fraternal society such as the Elks. When an area was thought to be as organized as it would ever be, a convocation, a celebration in other words, was held with a burning cross. It was during this time that there was high Catholic immigration from Central and Southern Europe, especially Italy. This cartoon from the Klansman magazine of 1926 is self-explanatory, entitled The End, which refers to the end of Catholic influence in the United States. During the second wave, most KKK members lived in the Midwest and the West. In Indiana, 1 in 5 residents were members of the KKK. One of them was Fond du Lac's own H.H. Dodd, in later years, Mayor of Fond du Lac, but definitely a former Copperhead. He had been convicted of treason and at one time was sentenced to die for his activities, but he escaped into Canada very quickly. Indiana was possibly the most powerful Klan in the nation. Wikipedia quotes Robert Coughlin describing the spread of the KKK in 1920s Alabama. It first appealed to the ignorant, the slightly unbalanced, and the venal. But by the time the enlightened elements realized the danger was already on top of them. Most Klansmen were Democrats, but turnover was rapid when the members realized the real goals of the KKK. It was the second Klan that adopted the burning cross as its emblem. During the mid-1900s, membership was supposedly 4 to 5 million, but by 1930 it dropped to about 30,000, finally fading away in the early 1940s. We come to the present day. The third wave that started in 1946 and continues at this time with David Duke as one of its well-known figures. In 1980, he left the KKK as Grand Wizard. By that time, his title had been changed to National Director because it sounded a little better. He formed the National Association for the Advancement of White People. In 1946, after World War II, the Klan gained momentum, and they are active to this day. They opposed the civil rights movement, sometimes using violence and murder to intimidate. Klan membership at this time ranges between 3,000 and 6,000, but it is noted in many news articles that a number has risen in the last few years. Last week on the news they said that neo-Nazism and the KKK have grown by 20% in the last 2 years. Today, the KKK is made up of small, independent chapters scattered across the U.S., and each competes with the other for members. They each claim to be the true descendant of the original KKK. And because these chapters are small, it makes them hard to infiltrate, difficult to estimate their numbers. About 2/3 of the members are in the South, while the other 1/3 has their home in the lower Midwest. While the Klan claims to be for Protestants, most Christian denominations have denounced Ku Klux Klan. Rosters of members have not been found. There is no evidence that they were ever kept, although I will show you a membership card later in the program. We have various definitions of the Ku Klux Klan, but most agree that all three waves were and are based on white supremacy, white nationalism, anti-immigration, anti-Catholicism, anti-Semitism, as well as Nordicism. Oops. Now, Nordicism, this was a new one for me. I had to check it out. It seems that in 1916, a gentleman by the name of Madison Grant wrote a book called The Passing of the Great Race. Grant viewed Nordics as an endangered racial group. Nordics are found in Scandinavia and other countries surrounding the Baltic Sea. The Nazi regime claimed that the Nordic or Aryan races who predominate among Germany and other Northern European people are the highest in racial hierarchy. And they were referred to as Herr and Menschen, or master humans. But let's go back to the 1920s, because that's when the Ku Klux Klan came into Fond du Lac to gain members. 1920 was a spectacular year for the Klan. Over 100 members were enrolled within 18 months, and that included members in Fond du Lac. 13th of September 1922, an interesting article was found on the front page of the Daily Reporter. It told that the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan were to be organized in this city, that a tentative leader had been selected, and that many men had already pledged for the organization. The tentative leader apparently had been selected by members from southern points. Organizers had been in Fond du Lac all summer, secretly working on plans for the Fond du Lac chapter. The article explains that members cannot be admitted unless given approval from the unit during a solemn conclave in which an impressive ritual is carried out in full garb and under the light of a flaming cross. It goes on to explain that Baraboo, Racine, and Milwaukee have councils of the Klan. Their existence in any place is usually not known until members have a parade to announce their group, ending with the typical convocation. The following month, in October, at a meeting at Fond du Lac's First Baptist Church, their minister, Reverend Robert Gordon, was asked his opinion of the Ku Klux Klan. He answered in no uncertain terms, knowing full well that he may come to harm. I suppose you know that some men have endangered their lives by saying what they thought of that organization. The KKK is a political power in 10 states. In at least 25 states, they have made public demonstrations. Many times they go to church in their regalia, making an offering and expect the blessing of the church. I do not want them to come here with sheets over their heads. I am as earnestly opposed as they are to the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church or any other church going into politics. There are a good many Catholics that feel that way too. But the Klan method of fighting what they consider evil is un-American and to be deplored. They are dividing communities into hostile camps against Catholics, Jews, and Negroes. Citizens should be drawn together, not apart. In the last part of 1921 and the middle of 1922, Fond du Lac's Ephraim Duffy, who would later become a U.S. Senator as well as a federal judge, urged everyone not to become involved with the KKK. It was in a later speech that he claimed that the KKK bred hatred in class and religion. A few weeks later, in December, the Grand Legal of Wisconsin announced that Wisconsin had over 15,000 members, and that Fond du Lac had over 800 new members, fourth largest in the state. At that date, plans were being considered to have a women's auxiliary in conjunction with the Klan. The plan included the fact that women would wear similar robes and hoods to those of the men.
Like pastels, right? Like pastels. Right?
Yeah. During the 1920s, Fond du Lac's main newspapers, the Daily Reporter and the Daily Commonwealth, usually would alternate information regarding the KKK and Fond du Lac. However, the papers of May 5th of 1923 both had headlines regarding the Klan. 1,000 Ku Klux members in this city, says King Kleagle. With over 1,000 members, William Wiseman, an insurance broker living at Milwaukee, and then King Kleagle of Wisconsin, stated that if Fond du Lac's membership could be scanned, it would surprise many that some of the most influential business and professional men in the city would be listed. But they never produced these lists. During the speech at the Armour E, Wiseman stated that objections to the Klan was due to propaganda being spread by unwitting press statements. He also stated that in addition to backing the U.S. Constitution, freedom of speech, one of the most outstanding features of the Klan was the exaltation of God and the protection of the purity of womanhood. Those opposed to all Protestant organizations were those who would be against the Klan. The reporter for the Daily Commonwealth was not as kind as to de Kleagle. He stated, after basing the legal right of the KKK to exist as a secret organization on an array of historical facts, the lecturer threw aside all secrecy and pacing and ranting, read before some 300 people assembled the oath taken by neophytes seeking admission to the caverns of the Klan. They secretly swore to uphold the Constitution of the U.S. and defend it even at the cost of life, limb, or property. The KKK has always been strongly in favor of zero tolerance, limiting foreign immigration. Wiseman continued by saying that the gates of Ellis Island should be closed and padlocked until every foreigner in the U.S. was thoroughly Americanized, because the majority of immigrants since 1870 were of a ruthless and lawless nature. During this speech, there was applause from certain sections of the audience, and surprisingly enough, that audience was made up mostly of women. Wiseman went on to say that colored races were chafing under the yoke of the whites and were again preparing to launch an attempt to annihilate the white race. He also explained that the teachings of Muhammad in India, China, and Japan, and their belief that Mustafa Kemal was the reincarnation of the Islamic prophet. They were not happy about the Muslims either. The white race is supreme and was made that way by the will of God. Let the colored race stay colored and keep the white race white, then we shall always be supreme. Qualifications for admittance to the KKK were given by Wiseman. There were 3 things. You had to be white, you had to be 21 years old, and you better be a Protestant. And so Fond du Lac was introduced to the KKK. Not much mention is made of the KKK until February of 1924. On the 25th, the headline read, "Burn Fiery Cross on Main Street. KKK symbol blazes up at Public Square." It seems that a car with 6 to 7 young men quickly drove up to the area in front of the Civil War statue, which has just been turned around so it's facing east. They set up the cross that was wrapped in burlap. It was soaked with kerosene. They lit it at the bottom, and after making sure it was burning well, jumped back in the car and sped away going south on Main Street. The cross was constructed of 4x4s. It measured 5 feet in height, 4 feet wide, and it burned for about 5 minutes until 2 passing policemen stamped it out. The newspaper explained that when a cross is burned in front of a public building in the South, it means that the KKK is dissatisfied with the official conduct of someone in the building, and that it will throw its strength against that person at future elections. The local chapter of the KKK, of course, denied any knowledge of this incident. At this time, Fond du Lac had a population of approximately 200 African Americans, most of them living in the southwest area of the city, not far from the courthouse. After this incident, rumors ran rampant with protests and letters by letter to both of the newspapers. About 2 weeks later, Fond du Lac's Armory E was once again the scene of a lecture by one of the Klan. It was peaceful, and about 1,500 people attended. The speaker was W.J. Rush from Ohio. He spoke on the principles and purposes of the Klan. Rush stated that Ohio had one of the strongest clans in the U.S., and that at the previous election, members of the Klan carried all offices in the state with the exception of 4 cities. So everyone in that state except 4 cities, their officials were KKK. He also said that both Democrats and Republicans were to be blamed for the unfavorable propaganda about the Klan. He continued, economic destinies of the world are now controlled by the Jewish race, a people of 12 million. And he went on to say that the Klan barred Jews, Negroes, the yellow races, and all but those of Nordic blood. These people were to be banned to make sure the superior race stayed pure. He then suggested deportation of all mongrels was necessary to keep the U.S. a Christian nation. When asked about the robes worn by Klan members, he stated, the robe is for the spectacular, as knights wear their plumes, and the hood was to conceal the identity of Klan members as a protection against their enemies. As I said, it was a peaceful lecture, but there was an abundance of policemen there in case of disruption. A few weeks later, between 8 and 10:30 at night, 6 wooden crosses were burned on city streets. Lincoln Avenue at Division, 4th Street east of Main, East Scott just off Main, 5 Points, which is now 4 Points, West Scott Street, and West 1st Street at the south end of Darling Place by the post office. Each cross was constructed of 2x4s, 6 feet high, 4 feet across, wrapped in oil-soaked burlap. They were constructed similar to the crosses that had been reported to have been burned in North Fond du Lac 3 days before, and 3 others reported to have been burned at Ripon 2 days before. Newspaper reports for Ripon said that the burning crosses created no special interest and they were allowed to burn out. A witness came forward and reported that a car with the license number A6693 had been observed carrying one of the kerosene-soaked crosses, and when the license was checked, it was issued to Thomas Emmett of Whitewater. The police said they would investigate Mr. Emmett. Three months later, apparently we had enough people join, initiation ceremonies took place at the August Lang Farm on Lakeshore Road, 11 miles north of Fond du Lac, near Van Dyne. Almost 300 members of the KKK from Fond du Lac and Oshkosh were there and numbered at least 300 people. Between 75 and 80 cars were parked to block the view from the highway. The road members paraded around the field for 20 minutes. Speeches were given, and then the cross was lit. It was 20 feet high, and when burning, it could be seen on the east side of Lake Winnebago. The following month, in August of 1924, an 8-foot cross was burned on Church Hill in Waupun, causing a lot of excitement. Before the church was ignited, a long black limousine went slowly through the city toward the knoll. Several men jumped out, put the cross upright, and ignited it. Chief of police claimed this was the first time the KKK had made itself known in Waupun. 2 miles south of the city, an empty oil can was found, and it was determined that is where the cross was soaked with fuel. The local High Y Club of the YMCA announced on September 18th of that year that they deplored the KKK. After a 20-minute discussion at their monthly meeting, their condemnation resulted in this news article. It's not long, but it was at least there. The next day, 2 KKK articles greeted new readers. One stated that the following week a meeting would be scheduled at the tent on South Main in the Boulevard edition, and I'm thinking this was probably by Gundian Boulevard. This meeting would be open only to those passing the inspection of the door tender. The speaker for this meeting would be the Reverend J.W. Leonard. He was from Oshkosh. The other article was in regard to a report that a cross had been burned at Ellis and 15th Street, but the fire chief said some boys had started some sticks on fire at the bottom of a telephone post, resulting in the fire department being called. So that was a false alarm. The 18th of February, 1926. In 1926, there was a soft drink parlor located at 5 Points. It seems that some red paint was used to smear KKK symbols all over the front windows. According to the Daily Commonwealth, local officials of the KKK, again, denied any responsibility in this act. Names of the local officials were not given. A box ad in the newspaper stated, Pat Malone would speak on February 23rd and 24th at the Armory for the Protestant public regarding the attitude of the KKK and conditions in Wisconsin and the nation. The first night, the main hall and balcony were filled to capacity, and the Oshkosh Klan choir and drum corps performed for the crowd. The usual explanation of the Klan was given, but Pat Malone added some of his own comments. He said he was disgusted with the dress of girls of the present generation. He stated that many mothers teach their children to lie. He added, "When you mothers go out and play cards for a prize, you are just as rotten in the eyes of God as the dirtiest gambler in Fond du Lac." And that is Pat Malone. He added that no minister or priest should be able to preach in any church unless he was a naturalized citizen of the U.S. Concerning some recent Wisconsin events, he stated, "We have too many jellyfish judges in Wisconsin." In a 1971 thesis titled "The Ku Klux Klan in Northwestern Wisconsin," John Anthony Tershanesky, I hope I'm saying that right, gives us this snapshot of Pat Malone. As a spectator among the shadows, he went about his work of hatred and bigotry under the alias of Pat Malone. There was many a northwestern Wisconsin community which was not the same after the agitator left. He was not a Klan member, but held to their beliefs. Not a member of the Klan. Well, imagine that. He was notorious for polarizing communities by twisting facts to fit the Klan's objectives. The following is an account of the Klan lecturer based on available evidence found by the author. He was born in Oskaloosa, Iowa. His name was Arthur William Malone, but he went by Pat Malone. He succeeded in rocking northwestern Wisconsin with his preachments of hatred and bigotry, particularly in relation to the Roman Catholic Church. He claimed to have received part of his education at Drake University and said he was a graduate of Chicago's Moody Bible Institute. On checking, the author claims that neither school had a record of an Arthur William Malone or a Pat Malone going back to their earliest records. In another writing by William L. Clark, The History of Boyceville, Wisconsin, Malone claimed that he was a converted Catholic priest. Not much is heard of the Klan during the following months, but in July of 1926, a Republican convention held. There was only about 20 attending, but suddenly a delegation of about 25 men, supposedly supporters of the KKK, took over the meeting. They arrived in a body and occupied a block of seats in the meeting room. Their continued chorus of no's defeated several motions. Delegates were to be nominated to attend the upcoming state convention. So it was decided by the Republicans to do each person separately, and with the passage of that motion, some calm was regained. In 1926, the 4th of July was noted with a parade by the Fond du Lac Klan that would conclude with a KKK Klan location. The parade began on South Park Avenue, went to Sheboygan Street to Main turning south, Main to 15th, and to the grounds that was located at 17th and Park Avenue. At least 1,000 men and women marched or rode in the parade starting at 3:30 in the afternoon. Newspapers reported that thousands lined South Park Avenue and South Main Street to see the greatest demonstration the KKK had attempted in Fond du Lac. During the 2-day event, 12 were made members in the evening, followed by a 50-foot blazing cross. The parade went well except for an incident when the leading 6 horsemen approached First Street. A group of young men threw lighted bunches of firecrackers under the feet of the horses. The horses bucked, reared, and plunged their hooves, missing cars filled with women and children by inches. They were finally calmed down, and the parade continued without any more incidents. Following the horses was Fond du Lac's military band, and following them, floats, marching banners, each mentioning the area they were from. New London, Appleton, Oshkosh drill team of 60, these are all KKK members. Members of Fond du Lac's Tri-K, which the Tri-K is girls 18 and under. Winnebago and Calumet County groups and 225 robed Klansmen marching 4 abreast. All marchers wore Klan robes, most having their visors lowered to conceal their identity. This is the cover for the program at the Klan location. It was estimated that 5,000 to 8,000 people gathered at the grounds. A large dining tent provided a shady spot for many. Small tents were used as restrooms and erected on the area. Also on the grounds was a first aid tent and a well-used nursery tent. In the evenings, the electric lights turned the grounds into day and was much cooler than during the daytime. It was stated that the heat during the day was terrific, but most of the crowd stayed despite the weather. A number of years ago, I had met a gentleman who went to this Klan location. He was up in years, and he said he wanted to talk to me, and I said I would interview him. He was terrified because he was only about 5 years old, and he hid under the dashboard in his father's old-fashioned car. And all he could see were these white faces and masks walking around the car. Before I could interview him, he did pass away, and I'm so sorry because I'm sure he had a lot of memories. And the program for that day at the convocation, Pat Malone again made his presence known as several speeches, along with Reverend Daniel Woodward from Oshkosh. Woodward is listed in this article, and few things went amiss as some of the speakers didn't make it in time to speak. The Flaming Cross was satisfactory after the West Arm finally caught fire, being stymied because of a brisk west wind. The fireworks were late, and many of the hooded members in the parade did not show up for the evening initiation. The reporter apparently was the same one that had written the other article that did not seem impressed. He did not seem real impressed with the KKK. Speakers included Mrs. Sarah Bellows, Major Wisconsin Kleagle of Women of the KKK, during which she explained that the Tri-K clubs of girls under 18 were being trained in citizenship, enabling them to carry on when at 18 they would join the women of the KKK. During the Klan location, armed guards were present around the clock, and they were armed with rifles and shotguns. All were Klan members. It was during his speech that Dr. Woodward mentioned that attacks had been made on the Klan at Hudson and Marinette. The Klan tents had been burned, and the American flag and the Holy Bible. He declared that the U.S. was born 150 years ago that day, and was the duty of every American to see that this government progresses as an essentially Protestant nation. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. That's the inside of the program. I was fortunate to have this given to me and it's in really bad shape, it's crumbling. But it just goes to, it was printed by a printer here in Fond du Lac, and the lady who gave it to me, her father had printed these, and she had several, and she made this a gift to me. Let's see. A small article in August of 1926 noted that Fond du Lac KKK women held their initiation and elected officers. Again, no names. They met at the Oddfellows Hall, and a program was given by a Dr. Grant. As the months went by, less and less seemed to be reported in Fond du Lac newspapers. However, notice on September 1st, 1926, in a box ad, members were notified of a special meeting the next day. And then again, we go on for a while. The next month, the newspaper reported that following the initiation of 200 this week, the Fond du Lac KKK voted unanimously to accept its charter at a meeting to be held in November. So there has to be somewhere written things, there has to be a membership list, but we have never found it. They did receive their charter. Officers were elected and were installed by E. Davis of Atlanta, Georgia, assisted by Ralph Hammond, Grand Dragon of Wisconsin. Supper was served by women of the KKK at the Oddfellows Hall. After supper, men assembled in the upper hall for chartering, while the women were entertained in the lower hall. I would imagine it was doing dishes. No local names are mentioned, but as stated, hereafter the local unit will be known as Fond du Lac Clan number 59, as they are the 59th to become chartered in Wisconsin. 37 charters were granted this year to Klan units in Wisconsin. Information regarding Fond du Lac membership has not been found to date. When John Kennedy was running for president, when he first started, I found this in my door, stuck in the, it wasn't in the mailbox, it's in the door, rolled up. But that, nothing needs to be elaborated on. And that was a topic of conversation, if you remember, before he was elected, because they thought that the Pope was going to take over the United States. In 2010, I attended an auction in Kewaskum because I noticed in the ad that a KKK membership card would be offered. Actually, two items came into my possession that day. The top is a donation certificate, and that was made out to James D. Ostland, Joliet, Illinois, and is dated 1928. It's for $10, and that would be his, he is asking for to be made a member. And $10 was a lot of money in 1928. The other one is made out to Judd Knickerbocker of Milwaukee, and that's dated 1922. Both of these are falling apart. A number of years earlier, I had been to another auction at the Fond du Lac Fairgrounds and had been a successful bidder on a group of KKK items. Among that group was a letter of acceptance dated 1928. However, no names are noted except for the Imperial Lizard and the letterhead for the KKK, which is Atlanta, Georgia. It's a beautiful letterhead, actually. Also in the group was a pamphlet. What is it? There is no date, but it would have been before 1990. This pamphlet specifies that the KKK is a white man's organization and it lists what it stands for, especially the racial ideals. Also included was a pamphlet called Attitude of the KKK Toward the Roman Catholic Hierarchy, which was also pre-1990. Now that's Pat Malone. I don't know if he thinks he's Jesus or what, but this was sold at the Klan location for 10 cents. And what is inside are various verses to very popular songs at the time, which they would sing, but of course they're all geared towards the KKK. That was printed here in Fond du Lac. During the 80s and up through the 1920s, Fond du Lac had the second largest African American population in Wisconsin. They slowly dwindled away, and some of those who could pass for white married into the regular population here. Fond du Lac was not a sundown town, but Appleton was. And what is a sundown town? Author James Lowen's book, Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of Racism, explains it well. Put it on your to-read list. These are all white towns, many of which exist today, used any means to keep African Americans and any other minority groups out. That included the law, harassment, race riots, and even murder. And you will note the sign, whites only. You'd better be out of there after dark. If a person was anything except white, Anglican, Protestant, be gone. It almost sounds like something out of the Wild West stories.
What year was that?
That was until 1920. This is a fantastic book. He was here, James Lowen, he wrote Lies My Teacher Told Me. That was another one of his books. But he was here in Fond du Lac, and I talked to him, and this is Appleton was one in this area. He wanted to know if I knew Fond du Lac was, and I said, not that I knew of. I have never heard of it. So anyway, that's some of the history of the Ku Klux Klan in Fond du Lac, and there's more to be found, I am sure. Records were probably kept. I have never found any. I would assume that anyone who has one of the white deals that they wore, I'm sure that they would not acknowledge that their grandparents were in the Ku Klux Klan. But I would love records. If anyone has any questions, I will try to answer them, but like I said, this is in progress. This is a research in progress. Yes, sir.
One of your early slides showed 1,000 people from Fond du Lac with Klan connections, 1923. What was the population of Fond du Lac in the 1920s?
In the 1920s, if I remember right, it was around 20 or 25,000. And I am assuming the way they talk that these were all professional people. And a lot of them thought that they were joining, the YMCA or something. Because and it was mostly women that went to the basic talks. So I don't know what they were thinking. Anyone else? Yes?
Yes, I read your wonderful chapter on black people in this community in the 19th century, and I wonder, from the book, The Source of the Lake, the collection, and I wonder if you could say something about the nature and the state of the black community in this town during that time.
Okay, I'm still researching that, and hopefully if I live long enough, there'll be a book. The black people came to the Fond du Lac through a Baptist minister. He brought them from Carroll, Illinois, where he was teaching them to read and was amazed that they could figure out how to read. He brought them up here. He brought 75. They were in one car. Most of our men, I shouldn't say most of them, but a lot of them were off to the Civil War, so there were openings all over the place. They needed farm help, they needed barbers, they needed everything. So they settled in the southwest part of Fond du Lac. And on Morris Street, there's a very beautiful brick house that is right by the school there, and that was Huss Brickyard. Many, many of them worked there, and there are they're like two-car garage, brick houses, all in that area. If I ever live long enough, I'll take a picture of all of them. But I'm assuming that they took bricks home and built their own homes. Some lived right on the river there. But when the Klan started coming in, these people started leaving. And it was first the men left, and a few of the women stayed. Some were light enough to pass for white. They married into the population, whether anyone likes it or not, they did. I have found a couple more families that lived in the other section of Fond du Lac, but they were not from this original group that came up from Carroll, Illinois. But we had the only other group that was larger of African Americans during the Civil War lived over on the west side of the state, next to the Mississippi, and farmed over there. But yeah, it's fascinating. I was a late bloomer when I went to college, and I was talked into doing my senior thesis on the black people, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so boring. And it wasn't. It is fascinating, because you don't realize how many people were here in town. They had a wonderful church on 12th Street, and people used to go over and sit and listen to them sing at night on Sunday night. And they would sing one hymn right after the other for their evening at church. And but the very last African American was Mrs. Shirley, and she worked for many of our doctors and lawyers. She was babysitter, she was maid, she was cook, and they loved her because her funeral book is at the Historical Society here in Fond du Lac, and it's full. It's mostly doctors and lawyers and dentists and she had been employed by. So it's a fascinating story. And this is just one small part of it. It just, But everybody knows I'm researching this, so I get all kinds of information.
Was that a Baptist church?
Yes, it was a Baptist church where the minister, I tried to find a picture of him, but I couldn't find him.
I played the organ there for a wedding back in the 70s.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Does anyone else? Yes.
Did Mrs. Shirley, is she the one in the high school that's on the wall?
Yes. Yes, she is. Yes. And that was suggested by John Ebert, he worked at the Historical Society, and he was also the head of the library at Marion College. It was at his suggestion that they put her on the wall, and I know many people are very surprised when they walk in there and look at that. But everyone knew her. Her husband was blind, and he was, for a while, the minister in their church. And he would go on walks all over Fond du Lac, and he'd get lost. because he wasn't sure where he was. But he'd eventually always find his way home. They never went out and looked for him. But he was, and he claimed to have been one of Robert E. Lee's slaves. So I don't know if that's true or if he was just kind of supposed to. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much for coming. Yes?
I just do have a quick question about the title. I'm wondering what gave you that working title. At least to me, it kind of reads almost like a memorial or recruitment, unless you read the description of this.
Fond du Lac's Forgotten Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, I've written other things, and when I wrote about H. Dodd, who was the Copperhead, and that was Fond du Lac's Forgotten Copperhead. So, because a lot of people don't realize, unless you sit down and read our newspapers, you're not going to realize some of this stuff happened in Fond du Lac. You know, it's, but it's fascinating, and there's more to be found, I'm sure. There's going to be a lot more to be found. 1925, no one has found anything, and I did not have time to go through those papers, because the papers then were 40 pages long. And I've seen up to 48 pages, and it takes a while to get through, and especially when you get stuck on all the good articles. So, but there'll be more, and I'll redo it again when I get more information. And thank you so much.
Festival. There's a book there that
That's fascinating.
So you know that girl, she's the one you were talking to.
Yes.
Remember her from the high school?
Yeah, and now she works for school district. Her Louise in the district is the diversity person.
That's where I remember.
So Louise and her husband Keith now, they're both colleagues.